Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, everybody. Today I'm interviewing Chris Burrell, president of Burrell and Associates Executive Search in Plano, Texas. Chris has 28 years experience in the recruiting industry and has developed business relationships with top Fortune 500 companies in telecommunications, high-tech, and security. Major clients include Century Link Vonage, Harte Hanks, T-Mobile, to only name a few. She's an AIRS-trained recruiter and is a member of the Executive Search Owners Association. Chris has a Bachelor of Arts degree from Southern Methodist University. Welcome, Chris. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Eric. I'm glad to be a part of it. I'm glad I could join the show.
Super. Before we jump in, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I grew up in Chicago, a neighborhood of Chicago, and ended up going to SMU, as you know, which is here in Dallas. So that's really what got me down here to Dallas. And graduated in 1977. And at the time was looking at pre-law and was determined to become a lawyer, as a matter of fact, and really wanted to be probably probate law. So I was looking into commercial real estate. And at that time, 80s was like the big time for Dallas, and it was very popular in real estate. So I actually went to a Snelling & Stelling employment agency to get placed in a commercial real estate firm to kind of learn a little bit more about it and get my broker's license and do all of that good stuff. And so they did place me with a company that was with two very successful brokers here in the very early 80s. Unfortunately, in my tenure there, I learned a lot, but not about real estate. They were very successful, but I ended up being more of a, I'm not even sure what to call it. They had extracurricular activity going on in the office, and I had buttons under my desk to push when someone came in and someone had to go out the back door, and I just thought, yeah, this is not for me. So I went back to my Snelling counselor and told her what was going on, and she said, Chris, that's crazy. So she ended up saying, you know, I'm getting ready to retire, and I think you have incredible people skills, and have you ever thought about doing recruiting? And I just looked at her and laughed, and I said, no, I've never thought about doing recruiting. She said, I think you should take over my desk and just see what it does for you. So I was young, I was single. I thought, what the heck, I have nothing to lose. So I joined Snelling & Stelling and took over her desk when she left, and within 6 months I became the top biller in that office, and I was recruited away in a year to a larger firm that was a little bit more professional and starting a women's division. So I went there for a year and a half and realized that my manager and I were basically the ones making most of the money for that company, and I think we were responsible for about 85% of the billing. So we went out on our own. And then I went out on my own in 1986 and started Burrell and Associates.
Wow. You alluded a little bit to the fact that you were a good communication skill, a good people person, but can you elaborate a little bit on the attributes or traits that really contributed the most to your success?
You know, that's such a loaded question, and there's so many things and ways you can answer it, but I think number one for me was that I've always been a people person. And I think, you know, when anyone's looking for a career or what they want to do, look at what are your innate skills. And I've always talked with people easily, and I've always been a good listener, and I have a lot of compassion. And when you're in the recruiting business, that tends to really play into your hand very successfully because people are usually either looking for work or they've just been laid off or let go, and so they're in a tumultuous time in their lives. And so when you really do care about listening to them and what they're going through, and they feel as though you really care, that really makes a big difference. And I think truly that's one of the reasons why I've been as successful as I have. Mm-hmm. You know, my company's always been a very small boutique recruiting firm, but the fact that we have compassion and our integrity and just our sense of work ethics and tenacity, that's truly the traits that have gotten me through.
Mm-hmm. Makes perfect sense too. So, but just to dig in a little bit more, can you give some specific examples when that really played a role in you becoming such a success?
Sure. I mean, you know, there's a lot of times when people will call me and they would ask me to do favors. You know, I'd be working with a VP and maybe his wife was looking or his son was looking or something when I knew it was not in my field whatsoever. And in terms of making money on it, it was not going to be productive that way. But, you know, I went that extra mile. And again, kind of where that compassion comes in. And I recognized, you know, blessings will pay forward. So I just would take the time to do a resume or sit down and talk with him or give him ideas on what he should do, how he should interview, how he could improve his resume. And, people remember things like that. And I think that truly that is one of the reasons why people come back to us and why we have the referral program we do, because, we don't look at everything with just a dollar sign. We really do care about the people we work with. And I don't know how long you have been here in Dallas, but when I started in 1986, it was a really bad time in Dallas. They had the savings and loan industry had just crashed. And we had the same experience in 9/11. I mean, those in the recruiting field, 97, 98, 99, 2000, that was the heyday. We were making seven figures. Everybody wanted to get on the recruiting bandwagon, and a lot of people did. And then 9/11 hit, and everything just stopped. You know what happened with this country. Companies were panicked. Companies were afraid to spend money and hire. A lot of people were let go and didn't have a job situation. And, it's how did I handle through, that particular scenario, and how did I work through that? And a lot of it was just my tenacity to stick with it and to buckle down and just to let people know that we were still here, and really just continuing to contact people, knowing it was going to turn around, and it did. A lot of people that got on the recruiting bandwagon that thought it was going to be just a really nice ride dropped off, and those of us that stuck through and had that tenacity, the rewards paid off.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the economy as being one of the, bigger trials, I guess, you had to go through, but can you name other types of adversities or major adversities that really you had to overcome to become such a success?
Well, one of the biggest ones was being a female. As you mentioned with some of the clients that we use, we specialize in telecom and in high tech, and that's traditionally a very male-dominated industry. So for a female to come in, number one, just someone that my name wasn't that known until around 2000. So not having that reputation behind me, being a female-owned company and trying to make it big in a male-dominated world, that was a huge obstacle. And again, it just comes down to, be true to yourself, have your integrity. I've never been afraid of a challenge, and I had some vice presidents that, really did want to give me a chance, and I just didn't let go, and I would just constantly contact them, and, I would offer them some challenges, and two of them took me on, and they're two of my best clients to this day. They're like, Chris, I've never forgotten that you didn't back away, and when I made it rough for you, you were right there, and you challenged me back, just like any guy would. And I think that especially in that time frame, it was, very hard to be a woman. You don't want to admit it, but it was very chauvinistic. And to work through those issues was something that, I, for myself personally, think that was a strong attainment on my part. And I did it successfully. And we have become very successful, and we've basically been a female-oriented company, and now we're a woman-certified owned company, and I'm very proud of that accomplishment.
Nice. You spoke about tenacities, but, a lot of people face these kinds of issues, and I'm sure they would benefit from maybe learning a bit more how you bore down when you were facing these things. What was your state of mind? How were you able to keep up, in front of these huge odds? So can you explain a bit about how you did that?
Well, sure. Obviously it wasn't easy. And I think the first thing that happens is, we all feel fear. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that I didn't experience that as well. I did. And, the thing is, what are you going to let the fear do to you? Do you use fear in a positive way, or do you let it overtake you? And I try to sit down and think, what can I do to differentiate myself? What can I tell others that would make me stand out? And I just was hitting the phones and making those calls every day. I set goals for myself every day, how many calls I would make. Getting down to the basics. And I did it. I just reached out to everyone I knew. I really used my networking source. I joined networking groups. Once LinkedIn became famous, LinkedIn is probably one of our very biggest and most positive resources that I highly recommend for everyone. But it was just getting involved with groups, and I didn't turn any opportunity down. And a lot of people really only wanted to go after major companies, and I think I was very blessed in the fact that I didn't just go after the major companies, but I wasn't afraid. VCs were just starting up again, and I wasn't afraid to go with an unknown company, especially if there was someone I knew there or someone that had recommended me, believing that obviously they would grow and had only one way to go, which was up since they were a startup. And I was willing to go with some of the startups. And that turned out to be really a big plus for me. A lot of the small companies were purchased by bigger companies. I mean, a prime example, there was a company I started with called LCI, and then they were bought by Metromedia, and then they were bought by WorldCom, and WorldCom was a very well-known telecom company. And then WorldCom was eventually bought by MCI, and so it became this, multi-billion-dollar company. But I wasn't afraid to go to work with a company called LCI that no one had heard of, at the beginning, because I liked the owner and I liked the managers that I worked with, and I believed in them, and it worked out.
Awesome. Now, looking forward, what's your vision about your business? Because yes, you're successful right now, but I'm sure you have a 5-year vision or so.
We're a small boutique firm, and I'm proud of that, and I want to keep it that way. There's only 5 of us, and most of my team has been with me for 12 years, with the exception of one who joined me a year and a half ago, and she's been our superstar. And for me, I think it's just having the right team in place and deciding what works for you. I could have grown my company. I've had offers to buy my company, but I still wanted to be in control. I wanted to be small. So it's really continuing in the vein that we're doing and just reaching out to more companies. I've been blessed that I haven't had to do a lot with marketing in that because of the people that I've worked with over, almost a 30-year span, they remember me and they refer people to me, and that has just kept us busy literally for the last 30 years. So, my 5-year vision is to be willing to expand. I mean, the telecom industry is really changing right now. I mean, we're no longer the phone companies, and it's no longer just about, phone and voice and data and internet. It's, all about the cloud. And so it's really keeping up on all of that type of cloud technology and cybersecurity and a lot of things that are just, you can see that it's changing in this industry, and it's being willing to keep up with those changes and look at I'm working with VC companies right now that are putting money into these startups that are into cloud and all this type of security, and that's where I feel the future is. And so it's just kind of being on top of your field, whatever that specialization might be, and really trying to, incorporate the changes, see when it's changing, and be willing to go to those new companies or VC firms and, follow where the trends are going. And that's what we try to do, and that's what I plan to do for the next 5 years.
Well said. If we look more on the client's perspective now, what are the common problems or misconceptions you see among your clients, both the companies that hire you or those seeking to help you? You want to help in the first place? Well,
two really separate questions. And so, let's talk about the clients first. Clients will have openings, right? They have needs. And a lot of times it'll come through their HR departments, and they'll have a job description, and it'll read a certain way on paper. Then they'll start interviewing people, and they'll recognize, well, gosh, I talked with this person, and they bring this to the table that wasn't necessarily part of the job description, and I think I want to incorporate this. And, they continue to do that where the position evolves. And sometimes, especially when you're utilizing a recruiter and one that you know and have a trust with, I think it's important that you trust that recruiter and know that sometimes I'll present a candidate that maybe on paper isn't exactly what they would be looking for, but I know the client well enough. I know the manager or the vice president well enough. I know what they're looking for and what it will take to help them to get to that bottom line revenue. So asking them to trust me to say, look, I want you to talk to this person. This is what they can bring to the table for you. And being in that scenario is I think, one of the biggest pluses of utilizing a recruiter. We have a chance to sell you in a way that you don't. And we have a chance to go to people that we've worked with in the past that we have a reputation with that will listen to us when, you yourself just going out after that job don't have that opportunity. And sometimes we can really make them see that someone does bring something to the table that they otherwise wouldn't see because it's not obvious on the resume. Mm-hmm. But on the candidate side, two things. I think, I'm a prime example, as I shared with you. I think some people go to college and they think this is what I want to do and this is what I want to be when I grow up. And they take all these classes because they program themselves into believing this is what they want to do. And they take the classes and it doesn't necessarily wow them or do anything for them. And then they get out and they're tunnel vision and feel like this is the only thing they can do. and they go after that job, and a lot of times after their first 4 to 5 years of employment, they're unsatisfied because they haven't really done, followed a true passion. I tell kids out of college, do the testing. I think, personality testing and it's so important because it really will show people what your innate qualities are. And sometimes we don't always know what that is. If you had told me in college I was going to be a recruiter, I would have laughed in your face. I was going to be a lawyer, and yet that's not what I ended up in. And truly what I'm in is such a pleasure for me, and I've been successful because it really uses my innate traits. I mean, I love people, and, it's a win-win. Clients need help because they have openings they need to fill, and you're helping people find a better job. So, it's a win-win on both sides, which makes me personally feel really good. And then on the candidate side, as I said, it's think about what you really want and what is a passion of yours, and then work with that to work into a career. And then once you've ascertained that, I can't share with you enough how important the resume is. Really get a good resume. That is key because you can well imagine whether you're sending it directly to a recruiter or to a company in their HR department, we're seeing 300 resumes a day. And that resume has to stand out, and it has to look really polished, and it needs to be concise and say what it needs to say. But I'll use my own industry as a prime example. If you're going after a cloud-based job or you're into cybersecurity or any of the high techs, having that word and verbiage connotation is so key because everyone's going to be looking for keywords and doing keyword searching right now. So it is essential that you have the right words and the right verbiage in that resume. And, I would really say the best money you can spend is using a really good resume service. RPW, Resume Professional Writers, is awesome, or Resume Prime. Those are two great companies, and it's worth your while when you're starting a career and looking to spend money to make that resume stand out.
Mm-hmm. Awesome advice. And speaking of advice, and before we wrap it up, what would you tell a smaller company who never actually use an external recruiting program for whatever reason, could be costs or whatever it might be? What would you say, what advice would you give that smaller company who is, on the fence about using such a service?
Well, I do it all the time. Mm-hmm. The smaller the company, obviously, the fewer manpower that they have. And traditionally, usually, you'll have, one person in HR or a very small HR firm that is really taxed to the max because they're doing everything. They're doing recruiting and benefits and, everything for the company. And a lot of times it's a matter of time management. We can free up your managers, especially in sales and in engineering, because usually you're either on trying to develop products or selling it is what's going to bring in the revenue for the company. So our argument is that let your managers do what you hired them to do, which is to get out there and sell and to spend their time selling or to spend their time developing, and let us do the recruiting for you because recruiting is incredibly time, it's so time-consuming in the sense that if you run an ad, you will get so many resumes, and probably 60% of the resumes are not going to even be qualified, but it still takes time to go through them and to ascertain that. So the biggest value we get is that the cost of our service for the time that frees you up to spend your time to do what brings in revenue for your company is phenomenal. And usually they will work with us, and we will give them, especially some companies, I will work with them to say, if you will promise to give me a certain amount of volume, we will give you an introductory cost. And we do that because I realize a small company, a lot of times it is a measure of cost. But when they see what we do and the value of how we can just show them 5 resumes and they're spot on for what they're looking for versus all the time they would have had to take to get to those 5 resumes, they recognize immediately the value that our company brings.
Mm-hmm. And correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing that I've heard through my experience is that sometimes they end up, if they do it themselves, they might not hire the right person. So the cost associated to not hiring the right person, whether that's because the person quits after a certain time or that you have to fire them and the time it takes, that's a lot of money, right?
It is a lot of money, and that's a valid point, but that's when your guarantee comes through. And not just the guarantee, but do you stand behind your guarantee? Mm-hmm. In our business, we give a very strong guarantee, and we guarantee that we'll replace the candidate. And, I have in the past, I've had, especially, in fact, this happened, I guess it was 5 or 6 years ago, but it was a smaller company, and someone just was about 12 days past the guarantee period of 90 days, and I'm not the type of agency that's going to say, okay, well, tough luck, you passed the guarantee period, because I knew that they were going places and I wanted them to be a strong client for us. I replaced that candidate for free, and they're one of my best clients to this day. So it's what are you willing to do to really pursue and get that money and make them realize it's a value, and the way you handle that guarantee, and it's always worked very positively for us.
Awesome. Well, that was very inspiring. And how can our listeners learn more or actually get in touch with you?
Check our website, obviously, BurrellAssociates.com, or feel free to call the office. I mean, you can always reach us at 972-702-9000. And I'm, it's been a pleasure to be on the show, so feel free to email me. They can always email me, and it's just my initials, cb@BurrellAssociates.com. And my admin will make sure I get it, and if there's any questions you have, we'll make sure we answer them for you.
Thank you so much. This is very, very much appreciated. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.